Oh, Greg, it's a real pleasure to get to chat to you. I went
Oh
to
my,
uni in Edinburgh, so I have such a lovely, fond memories of the place. It's a special place.
it's cool. I wish I had more time to just aimlessly wander, but what little wandering I've done has filled my cup. It's good to be.
Um, Congratulations on Sing Sing. It's an extraordinary piece of work. It really, really is. How was your Edinburgh Film Festival experience?
It was good. I should have been a little more prepared for British audiences, keeping their emotions a little close to the chest. It's a little different than our US audiences that
Really?
wear their hearts out on their sleeve. But I mean, it was really a warm, special room. It was great to be there.
I mean, I was a blubbering mess, so I would have been and probably embarrass myself, but I think it's a film as well that really stays with you, and a film that I've been kind of telling people about again and again, both in terms of it as a piece of art and entertainment, but also the story itself. Do you mind talking to me about how the project and you came to, to be connected and start this journey?
Yeah, I've been working on this movie for over 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. These gray hairs weren't there when I started on this. But
Oh man.
um but I came across it quite unexpectedly. I'd been producing a short documentary inside of a maximum security prison in Kansas. It
Hmm.
was my first time ever behind the walls. And on a tour of the facility, we were doing a short about something else, but I passed by a cell and there was a young man raising a rescue dog inside of a cell, which just kind of it stopped me in my tracks
Mm.
because, you know, I had been trained around certain stereotypes from the movies I grew up watching about prison, my own industry that I work in. And here was something that completely contradicted that and upended all my expectations because I saw the healing that was happening in both directions between this man, this animal, and I was just desperate to know, was there anyone else out there doing things differently? And
Yeah.
literally that night in the hotel room, I typed that question into Google, and near the top of the search field was this program in New York, Rehabilitation Through the Arts, that had been founded in 1996 at Sing Sing. They had been doing productions there ever since. They had been covered in all the major press. They had done all the classic plays, but there was an Esquire piece about a 2005 production of a time traveling musical comedy called Breaking the Mummy's Code that just leapt off the page to me. I just felt the playfulness of the work, the joy in the process juxtaposed against the environment that it was set within. And it was just so contagious and something I wanted to feel myself, and I reached
Yeah.
out to people involved, namely the real Brent Buell who wrote that play. And I got on the phone with him and he was just kind of like, if you want to know what the story is really about, you need to come to New York and meet some of my friends that have come through the program and are home now. And so my creative partner Clint and I flew up there and we sat around a breakfast table, and a lot of the men who are in the film now, including Clarence Divine I. Macklin and John Divine G. Whitfield, who Colman Domingo plays, they were there at that breakfast table, and that's how it all started.
It's such a beautiful and unique experience, I imagine, well, for me as a viewer, but for you in terms of making it, of being able to immerse those real people within the storytelling element of their story, and instead of casting the entire film with, with
Right.
known actors and things to, to have it headed up by Coleman, who's just phenomenal in
Mhm.
this, but and a few others, but to really throw that weight back towards them and give them this opportunity. Was
Mm.
that was that kind of the intention right from the start, and also involving them, in the process of writing the story and being part of this, what you would tell.
That evolved with time,
Mm,
I mean, in that first breakfast, we were very aware of the talent there, namely Clarence Macklin, who stars opposite Coleman. I mean, I met him and I knew he was a star, from the first
mm,
moment I met him. his charisma, his depth, and that was also clear from really all the men. And then, that only deepened with time. I always hoped that these men could be featured in the movie,
Mm.
and with time, it was a realization that these men need to be at the center of the movie. The other challenge was like, we would have these conversations and do our research, and then Clint and I would go away and try to, write the script. And, it always just kind of felt like an imitation of the magic that was happening in the room. And we, had lots of conversations with the real Brent, who opened up a lot of his stories, the Divine I and Divine G, many of the
Mm.
other men. We became volunteer teachers in the program ourselves, and every time we would come away from the experience being like, if it could just feel like that, that's what
Mhm,
the movie is. But then we'd try to be the filmmakers and we would miss the mark. And with time, the final kind of breakthrough was like, oh, this development and filmmaking process needs to mirror more how the community of the program actually operates. We need to open our circle up and invite these men into it directly with us. Most, specifically Divine I and Divine G, as we narrowed our focus and centered the story around their friendship, we asked them if they would come tell it with us. And immediately we were capturing that energy again in a way that was showing up on the page that it had never had before. And then as Coleman came in, that circle widened and he contributed as a storyteller too, and so on and so forth until we were on set, really continuing to expand that collaborative experience to the point where really everyone had their hand in making this movie what it is.
and how much, you that collaboration just sounds like such a, you've clearly kind of almost listened to the project, to what it needs as you've gone through it. It's um that's testament to how much it means to you. Uh, but kind of deciding on how much truth you would tell in terms of these individual stories, how much
Mhm.
of that would be part of the final kind of, you know, story of the film, so to speak. How much of it is real? How much of it, is this kind of creative license of fiction, I guess.
I mean,
Fine
it's
line.
it's so much, and it honestly, um we really had a debate of whether we would put, the more classic based on a true story ahead of the film, because we felt like in a way it kind of cheapened the level of truth that was actually happening in the movie. We felt like it was existing on its own plane.
Yeah.
So much of what happens in the film is factual. The only times that the like we really used creative license was like things that happened outside of this timeline, bringing it into this particular production, as well as, moments where something very true was happening emotionally, but we were representing it like internally, and we were kind of finding ways to bring that out so that you could actually see it and experience it, such as like, a moment where Coleman's character has this breakdown on stage. That was very much like the emotions that the real Divine G was going through, but didn't exactly express itself that way.
Yeah.
And then there's moments that are quite literally directly from the men's lives in their own voices that happen in the moment. There's a scene where they imagine their perfect place, and that's, yeah, and yeah, I love it.
Wow. Oh my gosh, yeah.
But, Brent's character, played by Paul Raci, just issues a prompt in this circle for these men to imagine a perfect place. And then everyone who responds is responding, from their very being in their own voice. None of that was scripted at all.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. It's so interesting as well. And you said at the start of our chat about the idea that, we very much have preconceived ideas of what prison is like, what, uh people within that environment are like as well. And I love that you're fighting through that to tell the truth. And I also love the fact that music wise as well, I feel like there's a almost a preconceived idea of what a score to a film of the
Mm,
subject matter would sound like. And I
mm,
love that you've gone completely against
mm.
what that expectation is because it's such a beautiful score. You know, Bryce has done a fantastic job, and I
Mhm.
wanted to talk about why Bryce was the right choice, and then what the conversations you had about what you heard and what you wanted to hear for this film.
Well, Bryce has we've have a long history with him, Clint and I as filmmakers, and it really began first and foremost. I love the band that he's in, the National, and when I was becoming a filmmaker and trying to make my first movie, I would often drive around with a notepad, trying to write scenes and just play their music, on repeat because it was just channeling some similar wavelength to kind of how I thought artistically. Never thought, I would have a chance to work with them, but I felt there was something quite cinematic and specifically in the music of that band. And, Aaron and Bryce Desner write a lot of that for the band, and
Mm,
help sort of conjure up like those ideas and those melodies and and kind of on a lark, we were in post on my first film, Trans-Pecos, and I just cold called their manager and pitched this idea, and it just so happened um, that the first film we did with both brothers, and they had a desire to get into scoring more, significantly, and had this little window open that happened to be
mm,
our exact window, and it was just this kind of beautiful match, and we had this wonderful creative collaboration, and then as the brothers continued to kind of mature in some of these other interests outside the band. Aaron moved more into producing, and Bryce really doubled down on
mm,
film scoring as well as like classical composing. And so on our next film, Jockey, we worked, specifically with Bryce on that. And on Sing Sing, it was really obvious that I would want to continue what we were building together. And I shared a little bit of footage with him at the end of the shoot, and he just kind of came back to me and was like, there's something quite major here. And it also
mm,
just it feels almost operatic to me musically. And that was kind of his starting place. And the way we always would talk to each other about music is I would really only speak to him almost in story terms
mhm.
and then allow him the imagination to interpret what that would mean on the screen.
Yeah,
And then kind of in our back and forth as he was sort of, building out some of these ideas, we, I would just kind of help him find like the needle hole of like how to, come alongside what's happening emotionally, but never lead too strongly and try to, um, force what's happening emotionally on screen, but only sort of support and deepen what's occurring already.
yeah.
But he's already so natural at that. There weren't long conversations.
There's it's even that sort of idea that the music is an emotional part of the characters in a way that there's the when they at the start of the film when they're going back inside when we and always realize they're going back inside the kind of music changes slightly and it's that kind of it kind of almost feels like it's a uh it's that it's a lack of freedom almost in a way you kind of feel from that it just plays such an important part in the scenes particularly when there's no dialogue and it's just a beautiful companion to those moments as well.
Yeah, and he also, you know, I think identified in a way that was very poignant to me that, the instrument that he felt like aligned most with Coleman's character Divine G was the cello, and kind of built a suite of themes around that was about kind of expanding um Coleman's character's capacity to reach out, and
Yeah,
allowing that to grow with the instrumentation and to swell, across the film, and then finding a companion in the French horn to that. And those are both instruments that I think just kind of hit you in the chest,
yeah,
more than anything else. And this is a movie that's very kind of eventually very earnest about what it's feeling and what it's expressing. And I really appreciate the kind of it's subtle, but it's also bold at the same time.
I don't know if you're aware, but on Wednesday night this week, as part of the BBC Proms, um,
I've
we
heard.
I was lucky enough to be hosting the show, and
Oh my God.
yeah, the London Contemporary Orchestra, conducted by Rob Ames, and we had a short suite from the film, and oh my goodness. I'll get the guys to give you the link so because you can watch it as well as listen to it.
Oh, really?
Um,
'Cause yeah, I've been trying to like figure out how to log in and get it, and
yeah, you can.
I need the
It's on.
hookup.
It's either on you can listen to it on BBC. I'll send the link on to the guys and they'll forward it on
Okay.
to you. So you can either listen to it on BBC Sounds or you can watch it on iPlayer. But I mean, the London Contemporary Orchestra in themselves are just such a fantastic sort of I mean, I think it was in this particular piece that they were playing a bicycle to get a particular sound to
Wow.
to resonate through the score and stuff. And so it was so joyous to get the chance to hear it live. And to yeah, to hear that arrangement of it. It was gorgeous.
I mean, I got to hear it live when we recorded it
Yeah.
at Air Studios, and I was just this fly on the wall, like just with tears running down my face with what they were doing. And Bryce was very, very adamant from the beginning that he felt like this was our first orchestral score together, and he felt it was really essential to telling a story about this community of artists, men in a circle, finding this shared sense of connection and vulnerability in a way that, in ways that they had never been really able to articulate before.
Mm,
There's something about all of these musicians also in this circle finding that same harmony that really aligned with the spirit of the movie.
yeah.
And then it wasn't just an orchestra, it was that it needed to be the London Contemporary Orchestra. And honestly, as someone who never hasn't had the opportunity to work with orchestras that often, I didn't really fully understand why it needed to be this exact specific group of musicians.
Mm,
And until I was there, in the room, and I think you start to witness like these little deviations, these little bits of personality across, every artist that start to emerge. And
yeah.
I think that's what allows their music to be as distinct as it is, even they're playing the exact same notes as anyone else would. It still is able to kind of find its own very distinct identity.
It was amazing watching them on Wednesday in rehearsals and how detailed and unique each individual player is to what they play and how they play. And, the kind of pencils coming out and they're making tiny little notes about the volume they play it, the way they play it, the strength that they play the note, all those kind of things as well. But that kind of the physical almost effect that I had of the kind of when that all comes together and it's uncontrollable. You can't control the reaction that you have to it.
Mm.
It's so wonderful. I don't think there's anything else like that, really.
No, no, not that I've encountered before,
Yeah.
and
Um,
never will
y-
again.
yeah. Oh, I hope you enjoy it and I hope
Yeah.
and it sits so beautifully. It was such a lovely evening celebrating a really wonderful mix of, this really exciting kind of feels like a new golden age of contemporary composers. Everybody from Bryce to uh Volker Bertelmann for All Quiet in the Western Front and Hildegard Nottier for Tar and yeah, it was great. Um in terms of can we talk a little bit about Coleman? And just watching his choices as a performer is very exciting and and where he goes with it. What was it about him for you that made him the right choice for this? And for you, what was the most important thing he brought to this role for you?
It wasn't um totally conscious at first of why he was right. It just sort of appeared very instinctually, like 6 years into development when we finally had this breakthrough to center the story on the friendship between Divine I and Divine G. I had a notebook open and this treatment spilled out in about 10 minutes. And the very bottom of it, I just wrote Coleman Domingo as Divine G right into the notebook. That was in November of 2021. And there wasn't really a question, even though I couldn't like intellectualize it, it
Hmm.
just was right for it, and we reached out to his team and we were able to get on Zoom with him, but we didn't have a script yet because we were starting over. We didn't
Yeah.
have a budget, and yet he just had the original Source Esquire article, and he got on Zoom with us, and he was like, "I've got so many questions about this article I just read." And we're like, "Well, let's tell you about the 6 years that happened since we read it." And he hears this whole story, and at the end, he was like, at this point in my career, I'm realizing that there are some projects that are seeking you to teach you something. You don't know what it is, you just know that it's trying to. And I'm saying yes to that at this point in my life. And I've got 3 weeks open in July, and I was like, I'll take them, But I just knew if he was leaning in saying yes, that if we leaned in and said yes, it would find a way, it would
Yeah.
happen, but then, with actually working together, then all the instinct of why he was so right, became very apparent, and that's for a lot of reasons. I mean, he's not just one of our greatest actors. He's also a playwright and a teacher and a director and a producer. And he, I think, really leapt at this opportunity of the kind of blank canvas that he had to really help shape this with us and help build this
Mm.
character. And then when we were on set, one of the things I love the most about working with him is that he's the kind of actor that you never want to call cut, because as you, I think, really astutely pointed out, like something is always happening, and he is always exploring and kind of and seeking something deeper under the surface. And there were times where like literally I would forget to call cut because I was just mesmerized by what was happening. He'd be like, cut, I'd be, oh yeah, 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 cut. Sorry. And, and also like he really led this cast in a way like it's a posture thing, where someone of his, kind of acclaim and talent could really use that as leverage in an environment where most of the cast are acting in their first movie and really pull all the attention onto himself. But he really kind of led from the front in a way of like recognizing that yes, he has a lot he could teach and offer this group of actors, but he also had a lot to learn from these
Mm.
men who had really lived it. And by kind of operating in that way, it allowed for this really wonderful alchemy to happen that was more of an exchange that really helped these performances transcend more than their independent parts.
What was the kind of reality of the set in terms of where you shot?
Well, it was very real. We made 4 locations into our one Sing Sing, and so all the exteriors of Sing Sing is the real place, and it was very important
Wow.
for us to show that. I mean, it's one of the
Yeah.
most iconic prisons in the world, and it sits right there on the shore of the Hudson River, and the duality of the sort of stunning natural landscape against all the razor wire and stone walls,
Mm.
guards towers is, you know, it really kind of feels like it's sort of at war with itself, and that's kind of what the experience of sort of the movie was like inside is like, you're kind of battling that darkness with the exploration of creativity and imagination, kind of constant. There's a constant tension in that, which is also happening, with the setting itself. And then the majority of our interior scenes, though, we actually shot at another maximum security prison called Downstate that had closed a month before we went in there. And one thing that we learned as we were moving into prep was that our entire alumni cast had been incarcerated at this place at one point in their journey.
God.
Yeah, which is something we were all very sensitive about. We didn't want this to be a re-traumatizing experience, and also all of our casts, never planned for the rest of their life to put on prison greens again, but here they were putting it on for this role, and Divine Eye told me that, his body itched when he put those greens back on, and yet at the same time, he, realized that the purpose of what he was doing was greater than any discomfort and was
Yeah.
allowing which then allowed this transition to happen of starting to see these greens of what they were now, which is a costume to express a character, and there was something quite liberating in that for our cast, and this facility that once held them against their will was now a place that they could freely roam and walk out at the end of the day, and that kind of provided a really unique catharsis for a lot of our men. But the main thing that helped them survive that experience was each other and to kind of have the camaraderie that, they can kind of recreate the sacred space of what that program is wherever they are. And they
Mm.
rebuilt it on the set and we got to capture it with a camera.
Is the program still running?
Still running. RTA is in 6 facilities in New York State, is hoping to continue growing. I mean, the statistics are really quite, I'm not usually a stat person,
Mm.
uh, but this one is one that I'm proud to talk about, which is, the recidivism rate in our country, in the United States, of people's likelihood to return to prison within 5 years of their release is over 60% will go back. The graduates of this program through the artistic process, less than 3% ever go back inside, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think what that's saying, because it's, yes, this is a story set in a prison, but I think it's a story that transcends its setting. I think what it's communicating is that, I think wherever anyone has access to art, they thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. And what art can give you the opportunity to do, to say, to deal with. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's kind of that's the thing, isn't it? It's so unique to the individuals, to what they put into it, what they get out of it, really, isn't it, as well?
Mhm.
I mean, I think the film is such an important piece of I was weird. I was talking to someone about it this week, and I didn't want to go into too much detail about it because like you've got to it's a film that you've got to experience as well as watch.
Mhm.
Um, but it's one of those films that I feel should be part of like curriculum.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? In terms of like those lovely moments that you have in, when you're studying or whatever, that you get to watch a piece of art that can make something click, it can inspire you, and I feel like this is one of those things that should be part of curriculum in some way to entertain, to teach, to kind of open people's eyes, as well. It's that kind of thing. I think we're so quick to judge, and I think that this is a great way of reminding us that we're all human beings,
Mhm.
um, and also the importance of art as well. Just yeah, it does so many things.
One of those things, that I think when you draw close to someone, when you really look someone in the eyes, which I think the movie is really intently designed to do,
Mm,
and you hear their stories and you know their name, they can't be anything but a human being. They can't be a number anymore. And once you see someone as human, that's where this sort of wheel of possibility starts to emerge and imagination opens up. And once we can start to imagine possibility in each other, then there's nothing we can't do.
mm, absolutely. Absolutely. I've got a bit of a random question to finish off with, but
Okay.
we talk about that this whole podcast started to celebrate the beautiful relationship between film and music and
Mm,
how important that relationship can be. And what's lovely that we get to hear from people are those moments that have been incredibly important to them. So for you as a filmmaker, but also as a film fan, was there a moment or that you either really kind of realize the importance of music in filmmaking, or is there a soundtrack or an example of that that you just go back to again and again and again?
huh. Um, well,
Just
and
throwing that at you, like just
yeah,
take
no,
that
no,
away.
no. No, it's like
Yeah.
yes, but it's like sometimes like when I write to music and to other scores or even I'm playing around with images and music, I'm not thinking of it really literally. It's sort of
Yeah.
operates at really a more emotional, deeper level. So it's weird that's not yeah, I felt your question in my body, but I like was scrambling in my brain to kind of
Yeah.
remember what it was.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't like uh overstate how much, Bryce and Aaron's band, The National, means to me,
yeah,
I've seen, I mean, both just playing in my headphones, driving in a car. I mean, it's so attached to really, I mean, one of the first short films I ever made was named after one of their songs because I literally wrote it just driving around the countryside listening to their music.
wow.
And so my beginning as a filmmaker is related to the music that now Bryce composes that we create.
Does he know that?
I think so. I think he's like, yeah, oh yeah, he's a fan. Hey, but it gets me tickets to the shows.
Oh man, I've seen them so many times.
Yeah.
Um, and that there's that, and also there's something incredibly cinematic about about Matt's lyrics as well, in
Yeah.
terms of the kind of characterization that I still think that that line from Slow Show, I
Mm.
dreamed about you for 29
Right.
years
Yeah, 29 years, yeah.
before I met, and it's
Oh
like,
God.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
pierce my heart with love.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really,
just
I mean, the short film
woo.
was named after Guest Room, which is also an all-time great.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I look forward to what the next project's going to be. I imagine it will be with Bryce again, possibly.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Um,
It's getting too
but
busy for us now. Now every filmmaker is paying attention.
I loved his score for Come On, Come On as well. I thought that was
Yeah,
so
so
what a film.
delicate.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
gorgeous. Um, Greg, thank you so much for your time today. It's really been a treat to get to chat to you.
likewise.
Um, I'm um I'm 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 so excited we get to celebrate the film. So yeah, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to chat to me today, and huge congratulations. You've made something very powerful, very
Mm,
beautiful, and really important, I think, as well.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Take care and enjoy my homeland as well for the
Yeah,
few hours you have left.
I know. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'll have to go exploring.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Greg. Thank you so
Take care.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.